Hi everyone, welcome to the first part of the tutorial for the Beatles medley as arranged by Tommy Emmanuel. As always, a quick thank you first to my top tier patrons. The first two parts of the tutorial will be released on YouTube. For full access, you can head over to my Patreon page or my brand new website. If you're looking for the tab and the notation file, then do head over to the website and buy it through the music notes link there. That way you'll get 20% off the regular price. All links are in the description. This tutorial will remain a work in progress for a long time. I've always considered the core of the Beatles medley to be Day Tripper and Lady Madonna, and those are the first two songs I'm going to cover. After that, I'm going to go over a whole range of extra tunes you can add in to create your own version of the Beatles medley. The list of songs that will be added later is based on a poll I did on my Patreon page, and they voted in a huge amount of extra songs. But first, let's have a look at Day Tripper. In this first part, we look at the intro, starting with the piano-like chord steps before adding the famous bass riff underneath those chords. There are no special techniques needed to play this part, but synchronizing the chords with the bass part will take some time. Off you go. Okay, straight to playing then, no more delays. The guitar is in standard tuning and we will be using a thumb pick throughout the whole medley. I guess it's possible to play most parts without one, but especially in Lady Madonna, having a clear and crisp attack on the bass part is really going to help you out a lot. So see what works for you. I'm sticking to whatever Tommy is doing. Straight to Day Tripper then. Let's have a look at the intro first. I'm going to play through it once, and as always the explanation follows on the other side. Straight into the first verse. Now there's a lot going on just in the intro alone, so let's go over it bit by bit. We start out in the first bar with what Tommy calls the upper piano part, which consists of the third fret on the B string together with an open E string. Just play these on each beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, using the index finger and the middle finger. This part is going to stay on top throughout the whole intro, no matter what happens down below in the bass. So there is also a little bit of muting going on. I'm muting in between each beat by dropping down the pinky slightly on the high E string, and I'm also putting down the index finger and the middle finger. You might also notice the other fingers sitting on top of the strings. This is because if I don't do that, there is all sorts of things all sorts of overtones that start popping up. You hear that? So that is without the muting in the left hand, and you want to go and try and avoid that. So try to get that intro part, those first two beats, those first two bars, sorry, to be as clean as possible. Just only those top strings. And then on the first beat of the third bar, you add a low open E string down below. That's all that happens on the first beat. 1, 2, 3. Then after the first beat, you add the index finger to the first fret on the G string. 1, 2, 3, 4. And immediately follow it up with another chord on the fourth beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just move up the index finger after that chord on the fourth beat to the second fret. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And just follow that up with another chord on the first beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and same timing. Now an open G string. 1, 2, 3 and 4 and heading back to the first fret. So the first bar moving from the second fret, from the first fret to the second fret, second bar from an open string to the first fret. Timing the exact same thing. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and now the very last time when we head back to the first beat of the next bar, we're not just going to play that small upper piano chord, but we're going to head for a full E dominant 7th chord. Now, if you've done everything right, then you should have the index finger down on the first fret. You should have the pinky down on the 3rd fret. So all you have to do is drop down the middle finger on the 2nd fret on the A string, and you get a full E dominant 7th chord. You get open E string, 2nd fret A string, open D string, 1st fret on the G string, 3rd fret on the B string, open E string on top. And you just play a quick chord stab on the first beat alone, and immediately you mute again, just to keep that top piano chord moving again across the rest of the intro. This is how it sounds together. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So just a chord and straight back to those stabs on top of that. One more time, even a little bit slower. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Tommy sometimes just leaves that last bar open with nothing but those chord stabs. Sometimes he likes to add in an open E string right all the way at the end to lead into the repeat. So you can either play this, you just leave everything open and head back into the repeat, or you play a quick bass note all the way at the end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And just that's all that happens extra when Tommy plays it live. 4 chords in the last bar, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Just adding in the bass string after the 4th beat and just playing together on the 1st beat. So one more time, really slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. That's how you can connect the first part and repeat together, if you like how that sounds. Basically, this is the first part before the walking or the moving bass line comes into play. Let me play that small section all the way through before we head into the real challenge. Extra bass note. Now, before moving into the bass line, Tommy sometimes adds in just 1 or 2 more bars of just that plain piano chord before he starts adding in the bass line. One thing to keep in mind is you're playing that D note with the pinky now on the 3rd fret of the B string. When the bass line comes in, you have to shift to the middle finger in order to keep the other digits free to play the bass line around it. You can do that the exact moment the bass line drops in. This is a rather quick shift then, but you can also use these last few bars to change to the middle finger while just playing that top chord. So maybe practice that after that final chord stab. And now you can move to the middle finger somewhere along those last 2 bars to make sure that you're in the perfect position to start playing that bass line. One more time, just pick whatever moment you like for that switch. And switch. And then moving into into the walking bass line or the moving bass line. So see whenever that switch works for you, but you can also do it the second the bass line starts. On to the real challenge now. Normally, when we learn to play fingerstyle parts, we're used to working with an alternating bass line, which we have to keep independent from the melody. Now, in this case, the bass line isn't alternating. There is no real set structure to how the bass line moves compared to the chords or the melody on top. So in this case, it probably makes a lot more sense just learning how each note, how each bass note lines up to those chords that keep sitting on top on those 4 beats. So that's how I'm going to go over it now, just beat by beat, adding to the bass line until we have the full riff. We start out on the first beat, just again, with a low E string and that chord on top. 1, 2. Second chord follows that straight up. So just bass line together with the top chord. 1, 2. Sorry, not bass line, open E. Bass string down below together with the chord. 1, 2. And then you sort of reach over with the ring finger. You're going to have to do some rocking back and forth. You reach over with the ring finger to the 3rd fret on the low E string. 1, 2. That is what I would aim for. Always aim for which bass note connects with the chord on top. The 3rd fret down below is played by itself, and then you shift over to the 4th fret, and that is again played together with the chord on top. So you get 1, 2, 3. And that is what you go for, and you just practice that until it feels smooth, but try to keep it in a loop. So try to keep that chord going on top and try to loop the section and add a bass note each time until it feels natural before moving on to the next. So you would get this then. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And just aiming for that G sharp 4th fret to land together with the chord on top. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That is the first thing. You just loop that until it feels right. One trick that I can also add is when you pick that bass line and you really want it to pop out, pick a little bit closer to the bridge. There is no muting involved in this section. You can really pop out that bass line, and picking a little bit closer to the bridge is really going to make that bass line stand out a bit more on top of those chords. Just give it a try. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Let me add the next bass note, which is going to be a B note on the A string, 2nd fret. 1, 2, 3, and keep the chords going. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and you just keep the chords moving. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and see, that is the way you keep adding those bass notes. Adding bass notes in between the chords always feels a little bit strange, so we're going to follow that up with the next bass note, which is the 2nd fret, but now on the D string. So you just drop down the index finger 1 string, so from the 2nd fret on the A string to the 2nd fret on the D string. And again, this lands together with one of those chord stabs on top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just together, 2nd fret on the D string, together with the chord on top, exactly on the 4th beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is where you should land. Again, looping it again this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you just keep the loop going. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is going to be the tricky section, because now we're going to follow this up with another bass note, an open D string, and that D string is going to be bound across the bar line into the next bar, and this always shakes up the timing for a lot of people. So this is going to be the crucial part in making the riff work. Here we go, let's add the next bass line. So all that happens is straight after that fourth beat, you just release the index finger to an open D string. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you keep those chords on top, and there is always the tendency to try and pluck that chord together with the open D string for one reason or another. A lot of people want to move that chord to that open bass string. You have to keep those chords exactly on the beat. Again, here is the loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Maybe a bit slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Even slower. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can also let, as you can hear, that D string has to ring out until we play the next bass note. Let's try to add in that next bass note right away. After that open D string, you play one of those chord stabs all by itself before adding in the next one, which is going back to the second fret on the A string. So we're letting that open D string ring. We play one extra chord, and then you have a small pause, which is the first one in the song, and then on the next chord you play the second fret on the A string again. Gonna try and count along again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. That's where it should land, and we're looping again. 3, 4. 3, 4. We're almost closing the deal now. A few more bass notes to go and you have the full riff down. That's all that happens. After that second fret together with the chord, we add the ring finger to the fourth fret on the D string. That is our next bass note, again in between two chord stabs. 1, 2, 3. See? Together with the chord, D string, chord on the third beat. 1. 1, 2, 3. Bit slower maybe. 1, 2, and. 1, 2, and. We're just 2 notes left to get right, and then you can play the whole riff. Sorry, 3 notes. I was mistaken there. We'll first head back to the second fret on the A string. So you keep the index finger down and you play that between the third and the fourth beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and. That is where that note should land. 1, 2, 3, and looping. And so on and so on. The last 2 notes. Open D string together with the top chord one more time, and then we can just add this in, hammering on to the second fret. That is what concludes the riff. Make sure that that hammer-on is nicely even, 2/8 notes exactly equal in length, no speeding up because you're not picking it with the picking hand, just nicely even, 4N. So that's what happens at the end. Open the E string together with the top chord and hammering on with the index finger to the 2nd fret, and then we move straight into a full repeat of the riff. And straight back to the low E string together with the chord, and we start all over again. And now you can loop the riff all the way through. And we're looping. Until it works. Now there is one fill that Tommy likes to add in once in a while, and it's just a little bit of timing displacement. We keep to the exact same notes we're using, but we're moving them around slightly. This is the fill. And basically what is happening, we're only moving around one note. Remember that B note, 2nd fret in that 2nd bar that we played together with the top chord, we're moving that in front of the chord now. So the 1st bar is the exact same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4. The exact same thing. Now the 2nd bar, we usually had 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, A string together with the chord. Now we're going to play the A string in front of that chord. That is all that changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything else in the 2nd bar stays the exact same thing as we saw before, only that 2nd fret, the B note on the A string, is moved in front of the chord, but it does make that 2nd bar feel completely different in totality. So work a little bit on this, but the only thing that moves is that 2nd fret on the A string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not anything more difficult to play than what you played before. It's just moving around the bass line slightly. Again, try to loop this until it feels natural. Maybe a bit slower. Even slower. Make sure you get that right. Tommy usually only performs this fill or this variation one time throughout the whole intro. Usually you get something like this. Now the fill. Back to the original. Stick to the original. Then he moves straight into the verse. That is usually what happens. One time the original, one time the variation, and then stick to the original all the way until you start the verse. That was the full intro. Now this is quite a big workload just for the intro alone. We haven't even added in the melody yet. But this is the foundation of the verse as well. So make sure you get that bass line into your fingers really well. It is going to make work on the verse a lot easier. So let me try and play through the intro one more time, really slowly. Then we are going to head into the verse. Switch. straight into the verse. The verse is something for the next part of the tutorial. In the meantime, take all the time you need to get this down. This is an important part to give you a decent chance of mastering the verse as well. So take your time and don't move into the next section too quickly. Good luck.